So for anybody who's not coming on Wednesday night, happy Thanksgiving. It's such a wonderful holiday because it's something everybody can celebrate, and it has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with anything else. It only has to do with being grateful. And that's a magnificent, magnificent opportunity for us all to be just grateful. And whether you're having turkey or ham or, Burger King, it doesn't matter. It's just about being grateful. It's just about being grateful. So, anybody ever cut your finger? I cut my finger last week. And I always am amazed to note that the healing always happens from within. The last part to heal is the outside, right? The last part to heal is the visible part. So healing always begins on the inside. And sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had an experience where you've heard of someone, or maybe you've had this experience where something was happening. You were getting in the middle of an accident. And in the middle of that accident, in the middle of rolling over, or the middle of whatever was going on, all of a sudden the fear vanished, and there was just a feeling of peace and a sort of interest in what was going on. The fear faded, and there was just sort of a sense of calm, a sense of peace, and just observing. That's the divine part of us that is always there, observing, and is always there as the presence of peace, as the presence of love, as the presence of all the good. It's right there. As we let go of all of the, there it is. There it is. I know that peace is not an absence. We think of peace as the absence of war, the absence of conflict, or the absence of this and that and the other thing. It's not an absence, it's a presence. Peace is a presence, and it's a principle. That means it's a law that exists in the invisible divine, ever available, is that consciousness of peace. There is nothing but peace if we can remember that that is so. And we forget. We all get caught up in the fear and the anxiety and the life experience and running around, doing, especially at this time of year. And we forget about the peace. We forget about the peace. And the master teacher Jesus said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. And when he was saying, I don't give it to you as the world gives it to you, because I am beyond the world. There is that within us that is the presence of peace. And he was reminding us, just reminding us that that presence of peace is with us. In one of the videos that we watched on Friday night about the Parliament of World Religions, there was a woman who spoke about climate change, and she said the thing that gave her hope was a quote from the Bible from Timothy in the New Testament. And Timothy said, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." A sound mind. And it's that sound mind that enables us to shift our thought, that enables us to realize that we have the power to go from fear to faith, to that experience of perfect love, because perfect love casts out fear. Perfect love casts out fear. So our founder, Ernest Holmes said, "Peace is the power at the heart of God. It is through the revelation of the self to the self that one understands life, that he approaches the power which is at the heart of God." So it's really about connecting with ourselves, being real with ourselves, going after that which is genuine. In today's Science of Mind, there was a quote from Howard Thurman saying, go for that which is genuine. And when you listen to the genuine voice within, you'll be guided to the right thing in each moment. But if you can't listen, if you can't hear, you'll end up in chaos. And so our enemies are fear and ignorance and superstition. Those are the enemies that we're facing. Fear, ignorance, and superstition. The ISIS is about as representative of Islam as the KKK represents Christianity. We are dealing with extremists. And they don't call them extremists for nothing. They're way out there. And then there are people here who are way out there. The FBI says the greatest terrorist danger here in the United States is white supremacist, anti-government armed militias. That's the greatest terrorist threat here in the United States, is anti-government white supremacists. Not a bunch of Islamic crazies. We have to deal with the Christian crazies. But the thing is, one of the talks that we saw said it's not about religion, really. It's about politics. It's about power. It's about power. That's what it's really about. She said, what happened is, in World War I, 5% of the people who were killed were civilians. In World War II, 61% of the people who were killed were civilians. In Iraq and Afghanistan, 90% of the people who were killed were civilians. This is not a trend that we want to keep going with. We have to find other solutions. We have to find other ways of solving these political differences and realizing, religion may play a part because it's part of the culture and the religion, mixed together, and the power trips come together, and all of it is a real nasty, nasty mix. But we have to remember what Fred Rogers told us. Remember Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Some of you may have seen what I posted on the Facebook page. He said, "When I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news, and my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world. And he also invited the media to show the caring people, to show the helpers. Because he says, when you see the helpers, you know there's hope. When you see the helpers, you know there's hope. So as we think about peace, as we approach our evolutionary impulsion to create a greater experience of peace, what happens is sometimes when we're claiming a particular quality, anything unlike it comes up to see for healing. So let's just think of all of this as coming up for healing. One way to hold it. All of this is so we can look at it and say, we do not want to go here anymore. We do not want to all lose our own freedoms in the name of safety from extremists. We want to be able to find out, what are they wanting? What are they after? And is there any way that we can actually connect? Is there any way to connect? I don't know if there is, but I'm thinking because we're all one, if we really knew that and really accepted it, there may be. So, the helpers, we're looking at the helpers. In the videos that I showed on Friday night, we also saw Jane Goodall. She's 81 years old and she travels 300 days a year as an ambassador of peace for the United Nations. And one of the reasons she's an ambassador for peace for the United Nations is that in 1991, she was working with young people in Tanzania, and they were hopeless. They didn't have jobs, they didn't have opportunity, they didn't have a meaning to their lives. And those are the perfect people for ISIS kind of things, because ISIS gives them a meaningful reason to live and to die. And so she said, let's figure out what we can do together to help the environment or to solve a problem here locally. Let's work locally. Let's identify a problem, and then you guys can figure out how to solve the problem. And I'll help you in whatever way I can. So she founded an organization called Roots and Shoots. So because you have to have roots in order to be stable and have a good foundation, and then you have to send up shoots in order to catch the light and to grow. And so it's called Roots and Shoots, and they take kids from preschool to university age to work on environmental, conservation, and humanitarian issues. They have local chapters in 140 countries, 8,000 local groups worldwide, involving 150,000 youth. Many of the chapters operate through schools and other organizations, and they're encouraged to identify and work on problems in their own communities affecting people, animals, or the environment. And Charity Navigator has rated this 4 stars for most of the money going to the programs to support these events. When I was in the Parliament of World Religions, I had went lunch at one of the langars where we just got all in line and sat down on the floor and just met other people. And the woman was sitting next to me was part of an organization called Peace Players International. And Peace Players International fosters playing together in conflict areas. They get kids from both sides, they get them together, and they play basketball. And they get to support each other and get to know each other and get to not be afraid of each other anymore. And so this is an organization where they say, 1 in 10 of the world's children currently lives in countries affected by armed conflicts. So they say through year-round sports activities, we're bringing together children from opposite sides of religious, ethnic, and cultural divides to develop friendship and mutual respect. So that is a wonderful thing. That's a great helping thing to be bringing peace into our world. And then there was a young man by the name of Jonathan Bellick, an Australian, Jewish Australian man who is now living in Israel. And so he decided to found the Australian Football League Jerusalem Peace Team. Jerusalem Peace Team. So this Jerusalem Peace Team has 7 Israelis and 7 Palestinians. And they come together to play Australian football. Have you ever seen Australian football? It is a wild and crazy game. They have like a football, like our kind of football, except it's yellow. And they have this football, and they can hit it with their hand, they can kick it, they can carry it, they can do just about anything with it to get it to the other side, to the goal, and they can get it through the goal posts, just like he said, just like Quidditch, Harry Potter. And so they got together this team, and so he showed a picture of them. And they were all, beaming together. And they had just lost. They came in last in the AFL Axios European Cup for the Australian Football League. But they didn't care that they didn't win, but they cared that they made it, because their goal was to make it to compete in those cups. And they did make it to compete in those cups. And they call the game footy. It's very Australian. They call it footy. And they said, here are the footy values. These are the values of footy. Communication. They have to keep yelling at each other during the game to let them know where they are in the relationship to the big clump of guys who are all bumping into each other and rumbling down the field. I mean, and they go. No timeouts, no, measuring. No. They are going for like an hour and a half, running. It's crazy. But it's compelling, I tell you. When I was in Australia, I was watching a lot of footy. Of course, the guys were also really good looking. But anyway, that's another story. Communication. So they have to keep yelling at each other. Then cooperation. Footy is a true team sport. They don't have superstars. There's not one guy who stands out. Everybody has to cooperate. Everybody has to be equally good in order for them to win. So it's a real team cooperative sport. Courage. They have to be courageous because they're fierce. It's a fierce game. And so they have to have the courage to know that they don't know. None of these guys knew anything about footy. So they all came in on equal footing, if you will, because nobody knew how to play it. It wasn't like some people knew soccer, whatever. No, nobody knew anything. So they're all coming from a place of total ignorance, equally ignorant, all learning together. So, they have to be courageous to step out of their comfort zone and play this entirely new game. They have to have trust. You have to trust that your teammate will back you up. And he said, it's really amazing when you see, a Palestinian running down the field with an Israeli right behind him going, I've got you, shepherding this person so that they can count on each other. They realize they can count on each other. And they are risking their own self for their teammate because they might get whacked if they're trying to protect that ball. So they're willing to risk themselves to help you to get that ball where it's supposed to be. And respect. They get to see and know each other's strengths, and they get to experience honoring everybody's abilities. And so they have respect for one another. And he said, communication, cooperation, courage, trust, risking your own self, respect. He said, if the governments of the world could practice these values, we might see an entirely different world. One of the players of the team, a Palestinian young man, said, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. This being on this team also creates a safe space for them to talk about their fears, to really get down to it, to talk about who's doing what, when, and to see how they can change the world. And they have come up with a motto, and it is possible to change the world. The future isn't destiny. The future isn't destiny. That is, it isn't predetermined. The Rabbi Michael Lerner says the only idolatry is believing that the way it is now is the way it will always be. It can change. And as Margaret Mead said, never doubt the ability of a small group of committed people to change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So really focusing on, I can be the change. I can be the change I want to see. He works for Seeds of Peace now. He's also a student. He's a graduate student at Hebrew University. And he works for Seeds of Peace. And Seeds of Peace is an organization founded in New York in 1993. And it brings kids from from conflict areas around the world to a camp in Maine where they can all participate in games and classes and experiences where they get to know each other as people and then take that back. They become seeds of peace in their own communities and countries. And now they have Visions of Peace, which is another activity which brings people to Maine for a couple of weeks of training there, and they're bringing educators. They're bringing educators from the Middle East, educators from Southeast Asia, educators from the US. They're bringing them all together to learn how to promote peace in their own countries, to teach peace in their own schools. So these are the helpers of peace. These are the people who are sowing the seeds of peace around the world. In this month's Science of Mind magazine, the whole month is about gratitude, and the guide on Veterans Day was, as the world is tormented by tension, we can find the courage to continue the work to bring peace to this planet. The unfoldment of that peace must come through a new consciousness, yours. When spirit is honored in all life, then intolerance and injustices are dissolved. There'd be no more reason for quarreling in our life. So too would the reason for fighting in the world disappear. Join the vision of the many who see themselves one day holding their grandchild's hand as he looks up into their eyes and asks, "What was war?" Then you'll be honoring and celebrating those who serve to bring peace and freedom into a world that works for everyone. So I would like to give you a prayer for world peace from Ernest Holmes that he wrote in 1950. I think this was at the beginning of the Korean conflict when things were starting to heat up and the Cold War was beginning, and he wrote this. And it has the quote above. He always has a quote above, and it says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I know there is but one mind, which is the mind of God, in which all people live and move and have their being. I know there is a divine pattern for humanity, and within this pattern there is infinite harmony and peace, cooperation, unity, and mutual helpfulness. I know that the mind of humankind, being one with the mind of God, shall discover the method, the way, and the means best fitted to permit the flow of divine love between individuals and nations. Thus, harmony, peace, cooperation, unity, and mutual helpfulness will be experienced by all. I know there shall be a free interchange of ideas, of cultures, of spiritual concepts, of ethics, of educational systems, and scientific discoveries, for all good belongs to all alike. I know that because divine mind has created us all, we are bound together in one infinite and perfect unity. In bringing about world peace, I know that all people and all nations will remain individual, but unified for the common purpose of promoting peace, happiness, harmony, and prosperity. I know that deep within every person, the divine pattern of perfect peace is already implanted. I now declare in each person and in leaders of thought everywhere, this divine pattern moves into action and form, to the end that all nations and all people shall live together in peace, harmony, and prosperity forever. So it is. And so, our affirmation, well, let's see, I was trying to decide if I would do this, but I'm going to do this meditation. I'm going to do one more little meditation. As I look out into my world, I see there is nothing to fear. And as I look back into my own mind, I know there's nothing in me that is afraid. My thought is filled with confidence, with hope, with trust, and with acceptance of good. I expect the mirror of my experience to be filled with joy. And as I turn the magic lantern of my mind into the great mind and spirit of the universe in which all things exist, I know that I am one with all peace, all power, and all good. I affirm the presence of good in everything I do, the guidance of love everywhere I go. I affirm that strength, enthusiasm, and vitality forever flow through me from the all-sustaining life of the universe. I affirm my union with God, and I know there is nothing in the entire universe to be afraid of, nothing to avoid, nothing to run away from. I am at home in the universe, one with God, one with all people, one with that perfect and abiding faith that knows no fear. And so our affirmation is, the spirit of peace dwells within me. 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 And so it is.